Hello. Every time I hear that intro music, I find myself singing with it. And the only reason why I am not letting you hear that is because you would not listen to me ever again. Hey, this is Hounding Clayton. It's Sunday. And there are a lot of people who are thinking about the future. We know for the third time in history, Inauguration Day is also the great and beloved Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday celebration. It's a commemoration of all of the things that he fought for and the principles and the values that he instilled in so many of us throughout our entire lives. For many of us, we are not excited about what is to come for the next 4 years. And there are others who are excited about this. I can't understand it, but they are excited. I tell my friends, hey, listen, you only have to worry about the next 2 years because the first 2 years are going to be so disastrous that Democrats are going to take over the House and or the Senate because of how much of a disaster we're going through. I ask people every single day, have you figured out, put into place your 4-year Trump family plan? Have you put that into place? What are your ideas? And a lot of people haven't thought about it, but those who have thought about it, they're like, either they're going to ignore, all the chaos, and others are like, well, I'm getting a generator, because I've talked about that before. Other people are like, well, I'm working on my house. And I mean, it's like the extension of COVID in the worst days, honestly. When we weren't allowed to leave our homes, we weren't allowed to go to our grocery stores, and we were so just taken aback by not being able to truly socialize, and things just weren't normal. And for the next 4 years, things are just not going to be normal. And we're all trying to figure out a way to escape that. I chose to create Hounding Clayton. Hounding Clayton is about addressing the center of government wherever you may be. It may be your city. It may be your county. It may be your state, where you have huge issues and you feel as though there is injustice when it comes to policy, and you want to do something about it. Well, for 20 years, I was in public service, and I always had to listen to the worries and concerns about everyday citizens who just want to live comfortably. They want to be able to retire in a ranch-style house. They want to be able to see their grandchildren grow. They're looking forward to that retirement, really. There are other people who are exploring the world. They're exploring who they are as individuals. What connects all of us, no matter what our background is and no matter what our interests are, we are facing a huge change in the way things have been. Normalcy, we're escaping that for the next 4 years. And like so many of you, I'm frightened. I know that in the first term, all kinds of people just knew what we were headed towards. They knew it. And somehow we ended up back in the same place. And for those who fought feverishly to combat a society where families are scared to walk the streets or take their children to school or to go to church or to go to the local food shelter. We're headed into a society where rich autocrats are ruling our country that was designed to be a republic. How does that happen? There are so many of us. In my experience, I always loved and appreciated the law, how you made sausage, the differences of opinions, and then you're able to come to a sweet spot where there is agreement. But the journey, the road that we are on right now, for many of us, is one of disaster. And we have to look at how we are going to approach this time period, honestly. Are we going to be activist? Are we going to be loud and bold? Are we going to hide our heads between our knees? Are we going to strategically communicate with the leaders who are making decisions? And are we going to keep those leaders accountable? One of the reasons why we are in this space right now, this time of uncertainty, is because we have not held our elected leaders accountable. We haven't asked them the hard questions, the detailed questions, the complicated questions, and demand that they have answers. They don't have answers so often. And they get elected, they get promoted, and the cycle continues, where we have people who are in government who are not serious about the job that they signed up for. And because of that, there are folks who live in our neighborhoods, who go to our schools and our churches, who are disenfranchised. It's one of the reasons, again, why there's Hounding Clayton, because it doesn't matter what city you're in America. It's important to keep our local elected leaders, our state leaders, and our federal leaders accountable. And we also, in many cases, not in all, but in many cases, we need to keep our local media accountable. Once upon a time, when people were reading their daily paper in large numbers, that was like what was written in stone was the local paper. But because people aren't reading their local papers, and like a lot of us, including myself, are getting the news from not only mainstream media, but from alternative mediums such as YouTube and X and BlueSky and what is it, Instagram and TikTok, which is finally back on. It was offline. I was all ready to do my first TikTok thing. But we haven't kept people accountable, and it's sickening for those who have lived this life for so long and have remained accountable. And it's never a comfortable spot, when your residents are coming to you nonstop, and sometimes they don't agree with you at all, and they're pissed off for one reason or another. There's something going on, and it's uncomfortable. But you know what? That discomfort makes us better servants. And it should never be shied away from, actually, because it only makes us better, I'm thinking Tupac right now. Whatever doesn't hurt us only makes us stronger, which is also something that's biblical. But I wanted to delve into an article that I saw this morning. Apparently it was printed today, but it was written on the 16th. So I didn't see it until I got my little email this morning. and read this article. But I wanted to go through it because I just had some real concerns with it. And I'm not going to mention the author, um, but the article does come from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And it was written, as I said, on the 16th. It was printed in the paper today. I read it. I called my good friend Tom Sullivan to see what he thought, because my first question was, wasn't this an odd article? I mean, there are a lot of odd articles by this person, but this one was among the most odd. And, I've been critical of the substance of a lot of their articles, not the Post, but this specific journalist. Because it's like, I'm trying to figure out, which planet are you on where you don't understand some of the basic things in government? And that's just what I'm thinking. And I haven't said anything and not a lot, a few things here and there on X, but it just, I can't take it anymore. Again, this is why there's Hounding Clayton, so we can look at this stuff line by line and provide a different opinion or a different approach, especially from someone who has served in government for so long. In the legislative branch, in the executive branch, that's my perspective. I've seen bad government, I've seen worse government, and I've seen great government. But there are always these kinks that we have to work out, and that's just part of the system of governance. You have to work the kinks out. But in order to do so, you've got to have competency when it comes to writing articles for the public. It's only in the best interest of the citizenry if there is a full-throated approach on what's going on in our local government. And if not, we're doing a disservice. So, tomorrow is, it's a double sword. On one hand, you have ignorance that elected our new leader in the White House. And then the other side of it, you have people who are intentionally perhaps not providing all the information that you can possibly give to best educate the public. And that is what Martin Luther King wanted. He wanted us to be educated and thoughtful. He wanted us to be critical thinkers. He wanted us to ask hard questions. He wanted us to be mindful of the most vulnerable in our society and have a soft approach and a sturdy policy that goes along with it. And that's why I want to go through this article that's in the Post-Dispatch, and I'm going to bring it up. It is entitled, St. Louis County Council Worked Years to Overpower Page. Newest move is boldest yet. All right. St. Louis County Council worked years to overpower Page. Newest move is boldest yet. So we're going to read along in here together. Over the past several years, the St. Louis County Council has made several moves, some subtle, others more obvious, that have collectively worked to seize power from the county executive. So let's just start right there. As someone who worked in St. Louis County government, saw enough where I had to be concerned about their leadership in multiple ways. This is just one sentence. Over the past several years, the St. Louis County Council has made several moves, some subtle, others more obvious, that have collectively worked to seize power from the county executive. Here's my first objection. If anyone knew anything about politics, they would know that the county council was used by Sam Page. I mean, this is a guy who knows every chapter, every verse of the art of war, okay? He too keeps it by his bedside, okay? So you have a group of people who, I mean, talk about a mouse in a trap. They had no idea how he was using them to get what he wanted. Time and time again. No questions. You had some council people who said things such as, we're not going to ask any questions in this public council meeting. Send your questions by email, taking away transparency from their voters. This is the council that voted to give all of the power to Sam Page on how to spend CARES Act money. Now, the last time I checked, there are 3 branches of government, and the branch that holds the purse is the legislative branch. I remember in 2020, I begged Councilperson Dragon Days not to vote to give Sam Page authority to divvy up the CARES Act money. I begged her in 2020 not to do it. And what did she do? She gave him the authority. So for several years, the CARES Act 2020, 2021, 2022, there was always a battle on how to spend CARES Act money. So you had some council people get mad that Sam Page was getting all these law firms, paying off all these law firms back and forth every single day. There's a new challenge during COVID. And the mastermind of what happened during COVID was because of Sam Page, who's in the executive branch. None of that would have even happened if the council did not give authority to Sam Page on how to spend that money. So we're only in the first sentence of this article. Okay, let's get to the next one. This month, the council pitched its most ambitious idea yet, to ask voters for the power to remove the county executive and any department head from office with or without cause. Okay, I don't pretend to like Sam Page. I once did when I was in the legislature, but once I was in local government serving the public, there are things that I did not like. Period. But you would learn either in high school or college that, again, there were 3 branches of government. It was by design by our founders that each branch of government would be co-equals in power. Co-equals. So no matter how much I wish that we could just get rid of Sam Page with a vote of 6-1 on the council, it goes against the very premise of having co-equal power in our government. It goes against that. So that would go to court, even if there was a measure that was put on the ballot that said 7 people are able to take away, remove the county executive. That would be in court. And, I'm no judge, but I know that would go all the way up to the Supreme Court if they kept moving. You have to be understanding of why we have 3 branches of government. Now, the public voters can pass a measure placed on the ballot that removes him. There's something already stated in law where there is a recall measure. So if you don't like Sam Page, you can recall him. But you have to go through certain measures to make that legal and stand in court. Okay, that's just the second sentence. Let's get to the next one. The way the charter has been written and applied over the years, it's really skewed toward the executive branch. I wouldn't disagree with that. Republican Councilman Dennis Hancock of Fenton told the Post-Dispatch, since the council is supposed to be a co-equal branch of government, it would make sense for us to at least consider what we can do if we get some bad actors. Now, he's not wrong. We are co-equals. Each branch of government is a co-equal. However, again, it would be challenged in court if a body of 7 people made that decision. And it would take the power away from the people. The first recent move came in 2019 when the council hired a budget coordinator to evaluate county spending. But over the past year, the council has picked up the pace. In November, it successfully asked voters for a few new powers, including hiring its own attorneys after relying for years on county executive appointees for expertise and information. So let's take the first part of that. In state government, you have an entire budget committee. You have a budget staff, like multiple people. You don't just have one person. Now, what would be accountable to say, here's where I want to get into. I'm glad that they have a person, a coordinator to deal with the budget. But honestly, because there are no sticklers looking at the expenditures of the budget to the finest line, every single detail, you have to pretty much have backup to make sure that there are checks and balances, because not everyone has the same eye. Even Mel Carnahan said, I always have multiple people, 10 people go through every single letter that leaves my office. And the reason why Mel Carnahan said that is because everyone has a different pair of eyes and they see different things. So relying on one person is not good enough. Here's the other thing. Having to deal with the budget for so long in St. Louis, long enough in St. Louis County, but for a long time, for about 20 years, 22 years, you look at, what's coming down, what the governor wants versus what the need is, and versus what policy is demanding in the budget. And, the state level, it's a huge budget. I mean, I think when I was in the legislature, it was like $30 billion. It was a lot of money, and we had to appropriate it wisely, making sure that it's part of our law as a state that we have a balanced budget. There should never be any question. I mean, I remember in the early days, there was the rainy day fund, right? Anyway, let's get to the next point. Over the past year, the council has picked up pace. Now, that's arguable. You can challenge that. Have they picked up pace because they're just now finding out all the ways they've been manipulated over the years because of Sam Page? Has the pace been picked up because, hey, some of the council people don't want to be left for fools anymore? Have they picked the pace because they don't have enough revenue coming in? Why has the pace been picked up? Well, in my opinion, I would say it's been picked up because they have figured out that many of them look like fools, allowing for one man to dictate how the budget is going to go year after year after year after year. As I stated before, the first example that I saw was giving the county executive full authority to figure out how to spend the CARES Act money. That should have been under the legislative branch, not the county executive. So I'm saying that they picked up the pace because they don't want to be left for fools anymore. In November, it successfully asked voters for a few new powers, including hiring its own attorneys, after relying for years on county executive appointees for expertise and information. That's standard. Let's go down. And now council members are considering two more: the power to remove the executive, plus the addition of a professional county administrator hired by the council to handle day-to-day operations. So the first part of that we've already touched on, the separation of powers, co-equal branches. The second part of it is the model that happens a lot in municipal government in St. Louis and across the country, where you have an administrator who basically does the executive branch style work. They make sure that hopefully all the policies and protocols that exist or need to be amended to make better, he or she is the person who handles all of that. So it takes the politics out. I don't know if I agree or disagree with that, but it's a model that has worked across the country and right here in St. Louis County. Hired by the council to handle the day-to-day operations. The moves taken together could turn the county executive into a figurehead. Well, that's what would happen if that's the example that they're choosing. So put these two things together. Adding a professional county administrator would indeed turn the county executive into a figurehead. Those are the individuals who show up at the press conferences. So I don't think there's a change in that at all. So let's move on. The council would gain influence over everyday county operations. See, that's a conflict. I'm not sure if you have one budget person, what makes you think that you're going to do the job for everyday operations in St. Louis County? If you have one budget person, just one, and then you're going to are you going to be, operating the day-to-day activities for transportation, children's services? I mean, that sentence, okay, the council would gain influence over everyday county operations. I don't know if that's good or bad. I mean, the whole purpose of having policy is to create a vision and a way to move a community forward, or a county in this case forward. But the bureaucrats who deal with each department every single day, they're the ones who implement it, the vision that's produced by the council. That's kind of how it's supposed to work. Department heads would manage such key divisions as health, streets, corrections, and finance, would have to answer to the council or face removal. Okay, so let's analyze this sentence. Department heads who manage such key divisions as the department heads that manage such key divisions already would have to answer to the council. Okay, so we already have department heads, and you know what? In government, you're already supposed to have department heads who are answering to council, right? That's what the legislative branch is supposed to do. They're supposed to have these budget meetings. Now, here again lies in the problem with this sentence. Wesley Bell didn't show up as a department head for 3 years to do his budget. And this council allowed him to do that. This council allowed him to buy 2 SUVs using CARES Act money. This council did that. Now, it's true should not be hindering any head of a department from coming before the council. That is their job. It is their job to provide oversight for each and every department. But when it does not happen, they cannot keep them accountable. It's their job to keep every department accountable for the way that they spend money and the way they provide services to people in St. Louis County. Or face removal. So I guess getting deeper into this sentence is the fact that Sam Page hasn't allowed his department heads to talk with the council. I just find that messy. Just that is messy. That would give the council more influence over road money, public health policies, budget decisions, and jail operations. Let me take you back to May 10th, 2022. That is the day the council voted to give authority to the departments to fast track expenditures and contracts. I believe on the top of my head, it's Bill 29. I may be wrong, but they voted on it on May 10th. I remember a meeting. I'm looking for this audio for Cindy Winkler right now. But I remember a meeting with, I want to say it was maybe Deanna Venker. It could have been someone else, but it's on my audio, where they were explaining to the leadership at that time that, hey, we really would like the council to fast track some of these things. So we won't be doing orders anymore. We want you to give the authority of contracting to the departments. Again, this is an example of the council relinquishing their authority. So when you put this whole paragraph together, it's just a mess. From my experience, it's a mess. You relinquish the ability for every single order to be voted upon by the council. You relinquish the authority for the council to vote on how CARES Act money would be spent. And now you're talking about overseeing operations, because that's what I'm reading. It says oversee operations. It says have more influence. Like, you should already have influence because of the budget process. This is why you vote on things. Democratic County Executive Sam Page has never had the 7-member council's full support since he took office in 2019. Well, that's not democracy if you have all 7 people agreeing to something. Let me read that again. Democratic County Executive Sam Page has never had the 7-member council's full support since he took office in 2019. The way that government works is that you have differing opinions. That's just kind of what happens in government. And in recent years, the anti-Page contingent has grown to include members of his own party. Well, it's about time. It's about time. Page has seen the changes coming, but he called the council's newest effort to gain the power to remove him a disenfranchisement of the county's 734,000 voters. Unfortunately, that's true. It's terrible government. It's unprecedented. And it really works against the ability of the people to pick their county executive and to remove the county executive themselves, Page said after the council introduced the plan. Now, this is problematic. Well, it's Sam Page. This is problematic because he's contriving a whole different thought process here. You know, if you're bad, you're bad. And the people do have a right to remove you. But the people do, not a council. David Stokes. Let's see. David Stokes, a local government observer with the Libertarian Show Me Institute think tank, favors the changes the council has made in recent years to balance its power with the county executives. But the measure pending before the council, allowing it to remove the executive, goes too far, he said. You know, he's a libertarian, and I agree with him. I'm a Democrat. To have one body of legislative officials, the county, be able to remove an independently elected official, the county executive, without any demonstration of cause, I think that would be highly, highly troubling, Stokes said. I totally agree. Republican Counsel Mark Harder of Baldwin said Page brought this upon himself. Half-half. You know, what my opinion is that the council has allowed him to get away with this mess for so many years. The council has. And I'm not going to pick on just one person for this moment, but the council has allowed him to get away with too much over these years. But he has brought it upon himself because he's been acting shady this whole time. All these things that are being proposed at this point probably wouldn't be proposed if we had an executive that was responsive to the people and the council as a whole, Carter said. Totally agree. And I would add an addendum, and as long as the body of the county council was actually doing their job, reading every piece of legislation, not just waiting to the 11th hour to make determinations and changes. And also, by the way, just follow the rules. And where there's not a rule, follow Robert's Rule of Order. That would be great. I would really appreciate that. Page's sway dwindles. St. Louis County Charter, first adopted in 1950, spells out broad power for the county executive, but a corruption scandal involving former county executive Steve Stenger in 2019 threw uncertainty on the office as a whole, leading to a slew of ideas to weaken the position, which Sam Page was a part of. Stenger was indicted in April that year and later went to prison for accepting bribes in exchange for awarding important county contracts. Is that happening with Sam Page right now? Has anybody looked at his campaign finance reports? Has anybody looked at all the attorneys, all the firms that have gotten legal contracts, and then also looked at his campaign finance report? Has the Post-Dispatch done that analysis? What about other contracts? The council was charged with appointing a replacement, and it picked Page, then a councilman, to serve the remainder of Stanger's term. And let me tell you, I was excited when Sam became the county executive. Stanger was he was right on a couple of things, but he was terrible. And the way that he ran that office was absurd. But I was against him from the very beginning because he just didn't make sense. I was against him when he ran against Charlie Dooley. Throughout the year, a special charter commission evaluated ways to fundamentally change how the county operates. Many of the same ideas the council is considering now came up then. The council needed its own attorney. Some wanted to replace the county executive with a professional administrator to oversee day-to-day operations. The council wanted more staff and power over how the county awards grants and contracts. There's a lot in this, because at one point, Sam was in the right space, and then he just got drunk with power. Just drunk. Off the wagon drunk with power. Of course, the council should have its own attorney. In the Missouri legislature, each caucus has their own attorney. So the Republicans in the Senate, they have their own attorney. Republicans in the House have their own attorney. Democrats in the Senate have their own attorney. Democrats in the House, they have their own attorney. And then there are more attorneys after that. A whole bunch of them. Throughout the year, a special charter commission evaluated ways to fundamentally change how the county operates. That is true. What's also true is that those minutes to the Charter Commission weren't even printed until, I want to say, 2021. One of my friends actually asked for the minutes to a particular meeting, and I think Jen Frank had to take a few days off to actually write up all those minutes back then. I don't know if that's true, but I remember there was quite a delay in receiving that information. Many of the same ideas. So because Sam was on the council, he knew how the council operates. He knew the system and how to manipulate. It was very easy for him because he was in the same place. Now the tables are turning for him. And because he's drunk with all this power, and he's been given so much power by the council, he has been able to manipulate the way government is run. And that is grossly unfair. But he continued to do it. And the council kept letting him do it. But little changed. Then Page's popularity among council members began to wane. The COVID-19 pandemic caused the first big controversy of Page's administration, starting in 2020. 3 Republicans on the council excoriated Page's public health policy decisions, especially mask mandates and restaurant closures. So even if you look at this, in this section right here, these 2 sentences right here, is not talking about how the council gave power to Sam Page in 2020 on how he was going to handle the CARES Act. Now, I will say there was one vote specifically that gave him that right. One vote. The person was asked multiple times, please do not give Sam Page the authority over the CARES Act money. And what did the dragon do? Voted in favor of giving Sam Page the authority on how to spend the CARES Act money. I was about to call him Sam. Page withstood another controversy in the summer of 2020 after he fired Hazel Irby, a long-time councilwoman who had taken a job in Page's office as a diversity director. She was the first Black woman to serve on the council and prominent leader in North St. Louis County and the Central Corridor, to be exact. One of Irby's allies, Democratic councilwoman Dragon Days of Belle-Noire, began siding with the Republicans periodically, including in opposing some of Page's COVID-19 policies. That was after the vote. After the vote. And not only that, it wasn't even a fight for real, until 2021. So the vote happened in 2020. Only in late 2021 were there conversations, because the first part of 2021 was about the lawsuit, not about COVID so much. But later on, they realized, oh, I shouldn't have voted this way. Well, listen to your constituents and you would have had the power of the purse. She also said she regretted giving Page control over the first tranche of federal pandemic relief funds. Too late. Too late. Why didn't you listen to your constituents who were telling you this in the first place? But no, you ignored them. The real breaking point came after the November election in 2020, when Page's allies on the council tried a maneuver to take the chair position, which comes with the control over moving legislation. That's true. But I really want to say that came before she opposed. Yeah, I want to say that came before she opposed Sam on the control. The timeline didn't even work in this. The attempt failed, but left trust broken with two North County Democrats on the council, Dragon and Webb. Since then, Page has rankled. Since then, Page has rankled the council members. Webb clashed with him bitterly over federal pandemic relief spending. She didn't read all the bills either. Page didn't deliver on a track and field project Dragon wanted on the University of Missouri St. Louis campus. Oh, that was a whole ordeal. Lots to talk about on that. Hancock of Fenton blamed Page for using the county's senior property tax freeze program as political collateral. Newly seated Democratic Councilwoman Gretchen Bangert of Florissant accused Page of offering her a job to get her to quit the council race. New Councilman Mike Archer, a Republican from South County, won a Republican primary last year where he criticized his opponent's support for Page. Councilman Harder has long been a Page critic, but his opposition to the county executive deepened during the pandemic. Harder attacked Page's public health orders that shuttered businesses, and the bitterness between the two remains. Again, at least for Councilman Harder, in some cases he allowed Sam Page to have authority. Not in all, not in a lot, but in a few cases he did. Altogether, 6 out of 7 council members are poised to oppose Page. Only Democratic Councilwoman Lisa Clancy of Maplewood remains an ally. Taking steps to seize power, the council has managed to take more autonomy in recent years with help from voters. In 2019, the council created a budget policy coordinator job to help evaluate county spending. Later that year, it hired Chris Howard, who still holds the position. In November, voters approved a measure allowing the council to hire its own attorneys. Let me go back to the first bullet point. Again, this is in my experience. You never want to have a staffer who's beholden to the council members, who's dependent on the council members for a job. So, like at the state, you have a full staff of bureaucrats who oversee the spending and report, knowing that they do not have to submit to some of the requests of the council members to maintain their job. Council members have complained the county councilor protects the executive and stymies the council will. Page hired the current councilor, Dana Redwing, in early 2023. That's a fact. Also in November, voters allowed the county council to take back its power to choose appointees to the Port Authority, a county agency that awards millions of dollars in grants annually. Voters also approved moving the day the council members are seated up by a week from the second meeting of the year to the first. Page's council allies in 2021 used the later seating date to try and choose the council chair. Again, when was that decision made? That decision was made during the charter. The conversation about the charter, that's when that came up. Who controls the flow of legislation? Last spring, the council began considering a bill that would ask voters if they want to replace the county executive position with a professional manager who would oversee daily business. The manager would be tasked with preparing the budget, running departments, and carrying out policies set by elected officials, at least in theory. They would be less susceptible to politics and corruption. Maybe, but I've already seen corruption the way that it is right now on that council. And now there's the measure that would grant the council the authority to fire the county executive, the county councilor, and department heads who have broad authority to decide how to spend money. It would take 5 of 7 votes. The most concerning part of the legislation is the power to remove the county executive or appointees, with or without cause, said Stokes of Show Me Institute. You could have a situation with nothing more than 5 members of the council deciding they don't like the county executive and just deciding to remove him or her, Stokes said. You need to have a cause to overturn the will of the voters. Voters can technically remove, and when he says that, what we need to remember is that there's also due process. There's also due process. Voters can technically remove the county executive, but it's extremely difficult. First, tens of thousands of signatures, the equivalent to 10% of votes in the last gubernatorial election, have to be gathered on a petition for a recall measure to make it onto the ballot. Absolutely correct. And that's the process. There's nothing wrong with that. 10%. That's how you know that people actually care. It should not be seen as if you want something to change, you better work for it. And that means as a council, you better get out there and talk to your constituents and let them know how you have failed them to help you to get rid of the person who's been failing them for longer than you've been failing them. It's practically impossible to gather enough signatures, said Benjamin Singer, CEO of Show Me Integrity, a voter advocacy group. The council could consider making the process easier. If you want to get rid of them, do the work. If they cut the percentage in half and tied it to votes in county elections, it would still be difficult, but more reasonable. Do you know what the state statutes say, Mr. Singer? Do you know what the state statutes say? Still, some on the council have begun to reconsider the idea. A few met Tuesday morning to talk about softening the bill, said the Dragon, the council chair from Belnor. Harder said He has another idea. Let the council put a recall measure on the ballot, bypassing the stringent petition process. The idea would need voter approval before the council could take that authority. So that's true. That's the legal way to do it. Let the council put a recall measure on the ballot and put it on the quickest election ballot. The idea would need voter approval before the council could take that authority. But time is running out to put a measure before voters.